Good evening and welcome to Bookmark. Tonight I'm going to introduce a few books by one author, so in a sense it's not just one book I'm recommending, but an author who has written several books in recent times, and the man's name is Robert Macfarlane. This is called The Wild Places. It's the second of the books that he has produced. The first was called Mountains of the Mind, which dealt with his fascination with hill walking and mountaineering. And I'm going to show you a photograph of Macfarlane, probably from a few years ago, but this is the blurb inside The Wild Places, which refers to that earlier book. So let me read, just to give you a little sample, because he's a nature writer, which can sound quite ephemeral and a bit distant from people, but actually he manages to bring together a love of creation, or the land and the landscape, the environment, human interaction, and also brings together history and culture and philosophy and psychology, all of that wonderfully well. He's a very creative writer. He is a scholar, a fellow, a teaching fellow in Emmanuel College in Cambridge. So this is what it says in the flip of the inside flip of The Wild Places, referring back to his earlier book. Robert Macfarlane's Mountains of the Mind, A History of a Fascination, won the Guardian First Book Award, the Somerset Maugham Award, and the Sunday Times Young Writer of the Year Award, and was filmed by the BBC. The Wild Places, which is this book, won the Boardman Tasker Prize for Mountain Literature and the Sundial Scottish Arts Council Non-Fiction Award. Robert Macfarlane is a Fellow of Emmanuel College, Cambridge. The wonder of this book is that he sets out with some friends, but normally on his own, and he goes around various landscapes within the United Kingdom and Ireland, and he goes into different terrains, and he writes very poetically. He writes in prose, but his prose is so wonderful and evocative that it's basically poetic in nature. And these are the environments in which he goes to in this book: Beechwood, where he starts out from, island, valley, moor, forest, rivermouth, cape, summit, grave, ridge, holloway, storm beach, salt marsh, tor, and then back to Beechwood where he began. And he really goes over different landscapes, wild places, places that are not well populated, or if they were, they have been, in a sense, abandoned by humans who have migrated towards sort of urban settings and cities and towns. But he goes to kind of recapture the feel of those ancient places or those wild places, kind of correcting the balance between a very urbanized society. So that's one that I've read. I haven't read Mountains in the Mind, but I must at some stage. After that, he wrote a book called The Old Ways. And just to give you an indication of how well rated he and this book is, this is the book of the year according to these various writers. And it really gives you a kind of cross section of many of the leading writers in the broadsheets and newspapers and magazines. So he really is a magnificent writer who has been really well appreciated by others. You'll be aware of Philip Pullman, who the children's author. This is what Philip Pullman writes, and I think always when a fellow writer from a different genre can affirm and appreciate your books, then you're onto something. This is what Philip Pullman says about Macfarlane's book, The Old Ways. He says this: he is a great writer about walks and walking, and in this book he walks in all kinds of weather, in this country and elsewhere, in bare feet and shod, and the way he writes is exquisite. He's a poet in prose, and it's the most beautiful stuff to read. The Old Ways thrilled me and delighted me and made me want to start walking again myself. It's a wonderful book, and I thoroughly recommend it. I'm going to take another quote from John Burnside from the New Statesman. It says, "Our finest nature writer, the great achievement of The Old Ways is to recreate a sense of the land as both holy ground and theatre. It constantly reminds us that we never stop searching for our place in this world by touch and feel, sometimes barefoot and sometimes lost, but always on the way." And then one more quote just from William Dalrymple, who writes in The Observer and is a lovely writer himself. This is what he says: "In Macfarlane, British travel writing has a formidable new champion. Macfarlane is read above all for the beauty of his prose and his wonderfully innovative and inventive way with language. He can write exquisitely about anywhere, and he does. And I've read this one twice now, and this time similar, but different. The same, only different. Part one is tracking in England. He goes track, path, chalk, silt. Then part two is following in Scotland. He goes water south, water north, peat, gneiss, and granite. Then part three is roaming, which takes him abroad outside the UK. Limestone, roots, ice. Part four is homing, comes back to England, and it's snow, flint, ghost, print. And I'm afraid that's only the bare bones of what is a beautifully evocative book, and I can't recommend Macfarlane and that book enough. The next one is called Landmarks, and again, this has received numerous prizes and has been affirmed and appreciated and praised by many fellow authors from very different walks of life. And in this book, he delves into the use of words and a lot of words that have fallen into disuse, and kind of dialects, Celtic and other local dialects and languages in the northeast of England, the southwest, the Hebrides, in Ireland, all these localized places that have got their own words and terms for common words that we use. So he has a glossary for places and for things. And you learn so much about the different words. Here at random is just words from a local place about the water surface. Acker, beggar's balm, caton, cockle, quirt struth, Coolbin, Enid, Geel, Jabal, Lingay Casse, Luden Mea, Wraith, Scoom, Sheer, Skim Ice, Smother, Swelk, Twindle. For instance, twindle is stream foam to divide into two rows or braids. It's taken from Gerard Manley Hopkins, one of his poems. An Allen in a wetland is a piece of land nearly surrounded by water. That's from Cumbria. A Crannog is a prehistoric lake dwelling. That's from the Irish. A haft is an island in a pool. That's from the Midlands. Worth is a flat meadow close to a stream in Gloucestershire and Herefordshire. You learn so much about generations of life and language and landscape, which are all kind of intertwined. And when language falls into disrepair, there's something about a people and their heritage that also, in a sense, is in danger of being lost. So Macfarlane, amongst the many things he does, is trying to retrieve culture and language so that those things are not lost for good and forever. And he's written a children's book co-authored called The Lost Words, where a lot of words that were left out of recent children's dictionaries, he's retrieved them. And with a couple of colleagues, he has written a book and a story that uses these lost words to weave a new narrative for a new generation from the fragments and from the treasures of the past. Really, really impressive. And then one that I am looking forward to reading over the summer when I've got a bit more time. It's called Underland, a deep journey. And basically what he does is to delve into the land underneath. And I'm going to read the blurb just in this. And this won the Wainwright Golden Bear Book Prize for 2019. And this is what the blurb says. Underland is an epic exploration of the Earth's underworlds as they exist in myth, literature, memory, and the land itself. In this much anticipated sequel to his international bestseller, The Old Ways, Robert Macfarlane takes us on an extraordinary voyage into our relationship with darkness, burial, and our planet's past and future. Journeying through deep time, the dizzying expanses of geologic time that stretch away from the present, we move from the origins of the universe to a post-human Earth, passing along the way through Bronze Age burial chambers, the catacombs of Paris, Greenland's melting glaciers, starless rivers and Arctic sea caves, the underground fungal networks through which trees communicate, and a deep-sunk hiding place designed to store nuclear waste for 100,000 years to come. Global in its geography and written with great lyricism and power, Underland speaks powerfully to our present moment. From its remarkable opening pages to its deeply moving conclusion, it is a journey into wonder, loss, fear, and hope. Underland marks a new turn in Macfarlane's long-term mapping of the relationships of landscape and the human heart. At once ancient and urgent, this is a book that will change the way you see the world. And I don't doubt that that book will not live up to that, because anything I've read by Robert Macfarlane is wonderful and does not disappoint. It really makes you want to get outdoors in all sorts of weathers, in all sorts of settings, in all sorts of landscapes, and appreciate the wonder and the beauty of the world around us, planet Earth, but of course in Christian or biblical perspective, the creation of a good and wonderful creator. So those are the books going chronologically. Underland, his most recent one, although there's also The Lost Worlds that I referenced, the children's book. Landmarks, The Old Ways, The Wild Places, which is the first that I read, and Mountains of the Mind, which I haven't read, but for completeness sake will. Robert Macfarlane can also be found on Twitter, and I often kind of click on the computer just to catch up on what he's doing. And one of the things he does, for instance, is to use one of the terms from his research and flag it up, often with beautiful photography. And he also will take a plant for the day, or a creature, or some other aspect of the landscape, or the living ecosystems around us, and lift it up for attention. So he's both retrieving the past, appreciating the present, and opening up the future for us and younger generations, so that his love of the world around us is not lost but enhanced, and so that we can join him. And with his poet's eye and with his poet's pen, he has produced some of the most wonderful literature in recent times, and I'm looking forward to the things that he will write in future. So tonight I'm recommending books by Robert Macfarlane. They will surely not disappoint, and I'm sure that you'll love them. Thanks for tuning in this week, and I'll see you again next week for another episode of Bookmark. God bless, and happy reading.